We're in the living room of a beautiful home owned and occupied by some very dear friends of ours, Marianne and Dave Brown in Peru. And I'm going to read what I think is a charming Christmas story written by a friend of mine and a friend of my daughter's from Long Island. My daughter Barbara Cove works at a hospital called the John T. Mather Memorial Hospital in Port Jefferson, New York. And so does Ursuline Judith Gavington, known as Judith Gavington. Some years ago, in the middle 1970s, she decided to write a book for her 3-year-old having to do with Christmas. And unlike traditional Christmas books, she wanted to focus on the female side, the side involving Mrs. Claus. So she wrote this charming story called Silver Berries and Christmas Magic. Well, it brought tears to my eyes when I read it because it is absolutely charming. It's a terrific story. If you get on the internet and look for her website, you will find a little more background about the book. After she had written it and after she needed to find an illustrator, she had no idea what to do, so apparently she put an ad in a local newspaper saying she needed an illustrator, and a young man by the name of Stephen Morris answered the ad, little knowing what he was going to get into. Well, what he got into was this charming book called Silver Berries and Christmas Magic. They decided they needed at least 20 pictures or plates, as they're called in the business, and she gave him only a few months from September to December in that year, I believe it was 1996, to paint these pictures for the book. He did. When asked why he did them in acrylic, he said because it dries faster. But you'll be looking at these pictures as I read this charming Christmas book, and you will be as amazed and mesmerized as I was. The book is probably not available in stores, but it is available online. It can be ordered, and I'm hoping to see it become a Christmas classic because I've enjoyed reading it to hundreds and maybe even thousands of kids and adults down through the years. So let us begin with a happy holiday season to you. Bird boots! The squirrels! Letty cried, suddenly coming wide awake. She had been so tired from playing in the snow all day that she'd gone to bed without feeding them. She jumped out of bed and yanked on her coat and boots. As quietly as falling snow, Letty tiptoed past her parents' bedroom, then hurried to the kitchen. Grabbing a handful of peanuts, she raced out the door and ran down the icy steps. All of a sudden, she was laying face down in the snow with peanuts scattered everywhere. "Bird boots! That's cold," she grumbled, lifting her face up. "Do birds really wear boots around here?" Startled, Letty pushed herself up, brushed the snow from her eyes, and looked around. There in the snow, munching on the squirrel's peanuts, were two. Well, she didn't really know what they were, so she asked, "What are you?" "What are we?" The one who had spoken lifted his chin proudly. "Why, we're well-mannered, honest, intelligent, very tired." "Oh, just tell her we're snow fairies," the other small creature blurted out. Okay, he started over. "I'm Kells." He pointed to his friend. "She's Jax, and we're snow fairies." "Bird boots," Letty repeated, rubbing her eyes, thinking she must be dreaming. She'd never heard of snow fairies. She said it again, "Jax." Kells looked around. "I don't see any birds wearing boots." "Forget the bird boots, Kells," Jack snapped. "We need help." Still startled, and now a little embarrassed, Letty silently promised to stop saying bird boots so often. But staring at the snow fairies, she shook her head and immediately broke her promise. "Bird boots? They couldn't be real." Then, just as he was thinking they couldn't be real, they moved. "Wings," she cried, staring at them. "You have wings!" "Of course we have wings," Kel said. shocked that anyone would think they didn't. All snow fairies have wings. Since Letty had never seen a snow fairy, she figured she ought to believe them. Be nice, Kells, would you? Maybe she'll help us. What's wrong? Letty asked. Kells began. Well, you see, little girl, my name's Letty. Right. Now, as I was saying, little girl, I mean Letty, you see, there was this really big snowstorm, and exasperated Jax cut in. She turned to Letty. He'll go on like that until birds do wear boots. He tore his wing. He can't fly. We have to fix it so we can get back to the North Pole. The North Pole? You mean where Santa lives? Letty was back to thinking she must be dreaming. But I thought elves lived with Santa. Oh, they do, Kells said. Winterland elves are the best toy makers in the world, but we live there too. Letty frowned. The North Pole's very far away. How did you get here? We rode in on the storm, Kells said simply. We're the best wind riders, Jack said proudly. Better than, well, just about anyone. That sounds like fun, Letty said, wishing she had wings that could ride the wind. Kells looked at his torn wing. Usually it is. Do you think you can help? Jax asked hopefully. I'll try. Letty's parents had taught her if she tried hard enough, she could figure out the answer to almost any problem, no matter how big. Letty figured a snow fairy's torn wing was a big problem. She studied Kel's wing. What we need is a patch. And some magic, Jax added. But there's no magic around here, Letty said. T says there's magic everywhere, in everything, right, Kells? Yup. Emma says you just have to know how to look. Letty looked around, but all I see is snow and trees. Then snow and trees it is. Jax took Kel's hand, and together the two snow fairies spoke into the night. Snow and trees, snow and trees, aren't we lucky to have toes and knees? Snow and trees, snow and trees, we have a problem. Won't you help us, please? No sooner had they finished speaking than a gust of wind whipped up. It swirled about the treetops, tugging at the branches until it loosened a solitary brown leaf. The leaf tumbled down, brushing Letty's shoulder before it settled on the snowy ground between the two fairies. There's a bit of Emma's magic for you. Kells placed the leaf in Letty's hand. What do you think we should do with this? Letty studied it for a moment. It can be the patch. Jack smiled. Now all we need is something sticky to hold it on with. We don't need magic for that, Letty waved. Come on, I know what we can use. She led the way into her warm kitchen. Well, Letty got a jar of honey from the cabinet. Jax flew onto the counter, and Kel scrambled onto the table. Are T and Emma snow fairies too? Letty asked, as she began to patch Kel's wing with the leaf and the honey. Or are they elves? Kells laughed. No, no, no. You see, I usually call her Emma, and Jax always calls her T. But her name is T. Emma. T. Emma Claus. T. Emma Claus? Letty repeated. Yes, you know, Santa's wife. Letty put up her hands. Now, wait. Snow fairies, magic, T. Emma Claus, bird boots. There's a lot I don't know about the North Pole. Kells twisted his head around. Are you finished with my wing? When Letty nodded, Kel smiled and poked his head into the cookie jar. He pulled out a cookie and sat back. Where are we? Oh, right. You said that was a lot you didn't know about the North Pole. Well, Letty, what do you want to know? Wait, Jax cut in. It's really late. Letty should be in bed sleeping. Oh, but I can't sleep now, Letty cried. I want to hear about Tiema and her magic and everything. Jax is right, Letty, Kel said, shaking his head. Just one story, please. Then I'll go right to sleep. You promise? I promise, Jax. Jax looked from Letty to Kells, then back to Letty. All right, but only one. Great, Letty exclaimed. At the same time, Kells said sadly, only one? Knowing how much Kells liked to tell stories, Jax repeated, only one. Well then, it's got to be a good one. Kells rubbed his chin as he thought a moment. Okay, I got it. He took a bite from the cookie. There's a story that's been told down through the years by elves and fairies about a time long, long, long ago. Way before, even before, Jax nudged Letty. Birds will be wearing boots before he gets to the story. Letty giggled as Kel sighed. Okay. It was a cold and snowy Christmas Eve. Santa was very, very late, and Tiema was upset. The fairies and elves knew she was, because she hadn't taken one sip of her pumpkin cider. Not one single sip. That's her favorite, you know. Letty shook her head. She hadn't known. Jax nodded. Oh, yeah, Tiema loves pumpkin cider. Well, as I was saying, Kells continued, she was fidgeting with the snowflake necklace Santa had given her long ago. She always does that when she's worried. You see, he gave it to her when... Jack sighed. One story, Kells. Oh, right. When Santa finally got home, he was very, very, very tired. The problem, Jax explained, was that every year there were more and more children. Santa needed a way to go faster, or he wouldn't be able to reach all the children next Christmas Eve. Oh, right. Kells took another bite of his cookie. So, over the next couple of months, everyone at the North Pole tried to think of a way to help Santa. But it wasn't until a Monday. It was Tuesday, Kells, Jax reminded him. Okay, it was a Tuesday morning. It was afternoon, Jax corrected helpfully. Oh, yeah, it was, Kells agreed. You see, Letty, Jax said, there was going to be a party for 3 Winterland elves who had earned their totally magnificent toy maker certificates. Licking the honey off her fingers, Letty sat in her warm kitchen and listened, while Jax, with a little help from Kells, told the tale of Tiema and the silver berries. Santa and Tiema were working in their cozy kitchen. Santa was busy making sweet mulberry mush and brown sugar dumplings, which Winterland elves loved more than anything except Christmas Eve. Tiema was mixing up her favorite pumpkin cider. As often happened, the tip of her long silver-white braid ended up in the kettle. When she turned and reached for a bottle of her special spice, her braid flipped out. Tiema, your hair, Santa chuckled, watching cider drip from her braid onto the chair and the floor. Oh, not again, Tiema groaned. I don't have time for this. She looked at the rag that hung beside the cupboard across the room. Smiling, she said, we've made the mush. We've made the pies. I'm in a rush. It's no surprise. My hands are full. I've much to do. Time is short. I wish you flew. Instantly, Tiema's fingertips began to tingle and tickle with a feel of magic. The rag lifted off the hook into the air. Working magic also made her kneecaps itch, so scratching her knees against the table leg, she continued, silly blue rag just floating on air, please clean up the mess on the floor in the chair. Quick as a shooting star, the blue rag zipped over the chair and the floor, leaving not a drop of cider anywhere, then settled back down onto its hook. Amused, Santa chuckled as he carried food out of the kitchen. Tiema, however, was left wondering if her magic could somehow help Santa get to all the children on Christmas Eve. Well, later that night, while the rest of the North Pole slept peacefully, Tiema tossed and turned. She kept thinking about Santa and the children. When she finally fell asleep, she dreamt of Santa trudging through the snow, his sack of toys slung over his shoulder, the blue rag circling his head, and reindeer running through the clouds above him. It was a very strange dream indeed. The next day, Tiema noticed reindeer more than she ever had before. It seemed they were everywhere. She even thought she saw them with their noses pressed against her kitchen window, watching her bake gingerbread cookies. And when she took her gingerbread men from the oven, they weren't shaped like men at all, but like reindeer. Tiema was so startled she dropped the pan. Reindeer cookies fell to the floor. Immediately, she set her magic to the mess. Hot and gingery cookies galore, up quick and clean, up off the floor. The reindeer cookies flew off the floor, back onto the pan, and the pan settled onto the table. "Oh my," Tiema exclaimed, "that's got to be it. I can't wait to tell everyone." "Reindeer? Fly? Impossible. Ridiculous," scoffed one of the elves who had gathered with Santa and the fairies to hear Tiema's idea. "And I'll ride this flying reindeer while I carry my sack?" Santa asked, liking the idea very much until another one came into his mind. Or maybe a little sleigh for the flying reindeer to pull. "Think of all those children," Tiema said, "and all those toys." Stroking his beard, his brow crinkled in thought, he nodded. "A very large sleigh with lots of reindeer." "Reindeer? Fly? Impossible. Ridiculous," the first elf huffed, still not convinced. "But Tiema," one of the smaller elves cut in, "even if you do make the reindeer fly, there's still the problem of the chimneys." "And sometimes they're just too small," said another still. "I hadn't forgotten," Tiema said. "I'll work on that too." "Then you'll need magic more powerful than any you've made before," the second elf said. "Reindeer fly? Impossible. Ridiculous," the first elf said once again. A fairy flew up to him. "Remember when Tiema suggested tying iron blades on your boot bottoms and gliding on the frozen pond? You thought we shouldn't even try." The fairy tapped his finger on his lips. "Weren't you the one who never wanted to stop?" The elf blushed. "That was a lot of fun." "Sometimes," Tiema said, "ideas sound impossible before they're tried." "So what do you say?" the fairy asked. "Reindeer fly?" The elf snapped grumpily. Then they laughed. "Of course! Why not?" "It's settled," Santa said excitedly. "Tiema, while you and the fairies work on your magic, the elves and I will build a sleigh and pick the reindeer." From that day on, Tiema spent most of her time with the fairies, gathering the ingredients for her magic, much of it from secret places only a fairy could find. Into the special pouch she always wore, Tiema tossed some of this and some of that, and mixed a little bit more of this with a little bit less of that, until she had a combination she thought would work. When she was ready to test it on Santa and his reindeer, she called out a warning. But that wasn't necessary. As soon as the elves saw her scratching her knees, they knew she was working her magic and started to run. Laughing, they scurried here and there, bumping into each other, falling over things, trying to get out of the way since they never knew where Santa would land. Over the next several weeks, Santa and his reindeer were flipped over, flung about, and tossed more times than a platter of pancakes. They plowed into snowdrifts so often Santa's beard and mustache grew icicles. Each time the elves helped him up, Santa dusted himself off and laughed so merrily as "Ho, ho, ho!" echoed through the village. When Tiamat discovered some of the North Polars had bet Lingleberry tarts on how many times she'd flip Santa, she chuckled and she bet 3 herself. Not a day went by that the fairies didn't bring Tiamat something she could add to her magic. But no matter how many different combinations and amounts she used, Santa, his sleigh, and reindeer just couldn't fly. Something was missing. As Christmas Eve approached, Tiamat grew more and more worried. She needed to think, as she always did her best thinking while walking through the snow-filled forest. With a basket of food to feed to the animals, Tiamat headed for the forest and a thinking walk. In no time at all, her basket was empty, yet she was no closer to an answer than when she began. Suddenly, a beam of sunlight broke through the thick tops of the forest trees and bounced off a cluster of icicles. It made a brilliant arrow of golden light that disappeared into a large group of trees just ahead of her. Tiamat stopped and slowly looked around. Everything was new. She had been so caught up in her worry, she had walked deeper into the forest than ever before. Intrigued, Tiamat followed the golden trail through the trees. It led to a small bush that twinkled and glistened. As she moved closer, she realized what sparkled were actually tiny, shimmering silver berries. She gasped. All her life, she had heard about the bush whose silver berries grew and ripened when the children of the world were brave or honest, or when they did a kindness or tried their very best. She had always believed that magic, the magic of children, was truly the most powerful magic in the world. With each step, her worries faded away. By the time she reached out to touch a silver berry, Tiamat knew she had found the missing ingredient for her magic. She had found the magic of children. On her way home with a handful of silver berries glowing in her pouch, Tiamat thought about when to use them. The winter solstice marked the beginning of the most magical and busy time of the year for all who lived at the North Pole. That night, they always had a grand celebration. If her new magic worked, and she believed in her heart that it would, 2 nights from now there would be even more to celebrate. On the night of the winter solstice, giant bonfires leapt toward the sky, lighting up the village square. Snowflakes dotted the heads of the North Polars, and the delicious smell of roasted corn and spiced nuts tickled their noses as they arrived at the celebration. Throughout the evening, the clapping of hands and the tapping of toes mingled with the snapping and popping of the bonfires as dancers swirled and twirled to merry songs. Later, when the sky filled with midnight stars and all the food was eaten, all the songs were sung and all the dances were danced, Tiamat whispered to Santa, "It's time." Hand in hand, Tiamat and Santa led the reindeer and the sleigh through the crowd. As they walked past the bonfires, Tiamat said, "We're here to join the spirit of the children of the earth, to the jolly, happy traveler who fills this night with mirth." Santa stepped into his sleigh and took up the reins. Tiamat reached into her pouch and grasped a handful of magic. "We are made of many things, friendships true, mighty dreams, of stars and suns and moons lit bright, mixed and matched and stirred just right." Fingertips tingling and kneecaps itching, Tiamat tossed her magic high into the air. Brilliant bursts of silver-white light sparkling with red and green floated through the night sky and settled over Santa, his sleigh, and 8 reindeer. Tiamat nodded to Santa. The elves and fairies held their breaths as Santa gave the reins a snap. The reindeer started to walk, then to prance. Then they flew. Up and up, higher and higher. A loud cheer rang out as Santa and his reindeer flew around the North Pole sky. Everyone grew quiet when it was time for Santa to land, which he did, gently, with no sound except his laughter. After the rest of the North Polers had left for their beds, Santa and Tiama sat on a fallen tree. "It worked," Santa said softly. "Your magic worked." "With help from the magic of children," Tiama said. Santa turned to his wife, his face alight with wonder and awe. It was amazing to soar over the night clouds and zoom past the stars. "I'm sure I'll be able to reach all the children now. It's going to be a wonderful Christmas." On Christmas Eve, all that remained were the last-minute chores. While the elves and fairies packed the sleigh and fed the reindeer, Tiama studied the weather information, seeking the best route around the world, then discussed it with Santa as he checked his list one final time. When the sun had set and evening had arrived, Tiama dressed in her beautiful red gown and braided holly and ribbons into her hair. Santa put on his red velvet suit and combed his beard and mustache. Then Tiama grabbed up her velvet cloak and Santa his red and white hat, and out the door and into the night they went. In the village square, all the North Polers gathered around Santa's sleigh to wave goodbye. "Just touch here," Tiama said, kissing Santa on his nose, "and the chimneys won't be a problem." Santa scrunched up his face. "It tingles!" "Of course," Tiama said as he settled into his sleigh. "It's magic." At last it was time for Santa to leave. Tiama, the fairies and elves all cheered as the reindeer leapt forward, climbed into the night sky, and flew out of sight. Back home, Tiama sat in her chair by the fire, contentedly drinking pumpkin cider and eating gingerbread. She was pleased in the part she had played that Christmas. Now Santa would do the rest, bringing his special happiness and joy to the children of the world, each and every one of them. Before she knew it, the front door flew open. A gloriously happy, wind-blown Santa tossed aside his empty sack and held out his hand. "Come with me, Tiama. We'll glide down a moonbeam and race a shooting star." Her eyes twinkled with happiness. Tiama took Santa's hand. Laughing, they went out to the sleigh. "Pick a cloud, Tiama, and hold on." "And that's the way it's been ever since," Kel said, still munching on a cookie. "And always will be as long as children try their very best." "And are honest and brave," Jax added from her seat on the counter in Letty's kitchen. "And remember to act with kindness," Kels continued. "There'll always be silver berries." "Oh, bird boots," Letty cried. "I get it now. It's us kids. As long as we make silver berries, Tiama will make the magic and Santa's reindeer will fly." "Talk about flying," Jack said. "It's time for us to go." "Thanks for your help, Letty." Kel started to stand, then sat back down. "You know, you really should hear the story about—" "Kels," Jax rolled her eyes, "we have to go now." Letty's sleepy giggle turned into a wide yawn. Closing her eyes, she laid her head on the table. The fairies gently touched her shoulder and whispered their promise to return. Then, with a flutter of fairy wings, they were gone, and Letty was all alone, except for her dreams of snow fairies, silver berries, and Tiama's Christmas magic. And that was the delightful Christmas story called Silver Berries and Christmas Magic. A little bit about the author from the inside fly in the back cover. Ursula Gavington lives with her husband, daughter, and 2 cats on the North Shore of Long Island. That's in New York State, of course. She often travels back in her thoughts and spirit to the desert outside Yuma, Arizona, where she once lived and dreamed. When her daughter was 3 years old, she noticed that while there was much that was good in the Christmas literature for children, there was nothing with a female role model. So began the tale of Tiema, Silver Berries, and the Other Side of Christmas Magic, which you've just heard. A little more about the artist. His name is Steve Morris. He's a self-taught artist with a fine arts degree from the School of Visual Arts, born in New Jersey and now living in New York City. He freelances doing illustration, portraiture, and computer graphics. Steve has been drawing since he could first hold a crayon and completed his first canvas painting at age 11. A charming book available hopefully in your bookstores, but if it's not, they'll have to contact the author and the publishing company and try to get some there. We'd like to thank Judith Gavington for allowing us to use her book here in the North Country to charm children in schools and on your favorite cable channel all across the North Country. A pleasure for me to know her and to know her book.